I had this thought. I hope I didn't lose my train of thought too much, but it was a thought about, a rant about boomers. I don't know if you'd call it in defense of boomers or what you'd call it. But I don't know, I was just thinking about it, and thinking about, like, how is it that my dad and so many other people can not see how fucked up the world is and shit. And I think on some level I get it. It's like, I mean, in the first place, they grew up in one of the best times in history with absolutely the most prosperity. And I mean, back when America had like the highest education level scores in the world, and jobs were plentiful, and they paid you not only a living wage, but a wage that would allow you to live a quality of life that exceeds, I mean, we're living in a time now where, like, a doctor would struggle to live as good of a quality life as, like, some dude that worked at a gas station in the 60s and 70s, basically. Yeah. Yeah. We're living in a time period where an airline pilot for a fucking, like, commercial fucking airliner or something would have a hard time competing with the quality of life of Jed that worked down at the mill in 1975, right? Basically. So, like, that's where they grew up. They got older. They did whatever jobs they could. They pulled themselves up by their bootstraps, right? And they just did whatever. And they did it with a big fucking smile on their face, because at the end of the week, they got that paycheck. And with that paycheck, oh boy, they could buy all kinds of shit. They could save up, or they could just decide, hey, I'm going to save this paycheck. I'm going to save most of this paycheck up for the next few months. And, by the end of summer, I'm going to buy this house over here. Which is like just in a few months, I'm just going to buy this house, and then I'll have the house at the age of 17 or something, right? So, and if they wanted gold or silver, they could just walk in somewhere and be like, oh, I'll take an ounce of gold. Okay, that'll be $35, sir. Here you go. And, yeah. Everything was booming, oil booming, stock market booming, fucking everything fucking boom. I mean, okay, there was problems in the 70s, but and people talk about, oh man, there are terrible problems in the 70s. These old folks, you hear them talking about and comparing what's going on now to what happened in the 70s, when it's kind of almost laughable, really, when you consider, like, the affordability that there was, and the availability of housing, and the how cheap everything was and shit back then compared to now. Like, you might have had to, oh man, did you have a time where you had to be in line at a gas station and you couldn't get gas? That does suck. I mean, don't get me wrong, but, oh man, I gotta wait in line. This one's out of gas. God damn it, I was just about to fill up my tank for 25 cents a gallon or whatever. Those sons of bitches, I can't believe they raised the price to 25 cents a gallon. Who do they think they are? Right? Oh yeah, it's basically the same thing as it is now. Right? But now, see, I mean, okay, see, so that's like them when they're younger, right? They're working at their job, maybe not even making that much money. Maybe they're mowing lawns, or they pump gas. Maybe they work at Burger Chef, made their way up to assistant manager, or whatever the fuck, right? But see, they can go out. Like if they were, this is what struggling and poor looked like back then, basically for the most part. I think is you know, you had to bust your ass to come up with some money, and maybe you really did find some job where the pay was really low and stuff. But before you knew it, you know, you'd saved, you know, you had $50 or something, and but with what you could do with that $50, if you were really wanted to, needed to, is you could go buy a used car from somebody probably for that $40 or $50. Now you've got a car. Anyways, so they get older, they have kids, right? They get married, they have some kids, and they have a kid, and they have made enough, even though they're struggling. They were, yeah, I'm not saying they didn't struggle. I'm not saying their struggle wasn't real. I'm simply saying that compared to people now, the odds were extremely drastically stacked in their favor, you know? And it's okay, so now they get a house, right? But you know, they had credit too. They were passing out credit cards like fucking candy, or you know, on Halloween. Right? And they had super low mortgage payments. And if they wanted to rent a place, there's super low rent prices. Like, you could get a fucking 2-bedroom house for $50 a month, $100 a month in some places. Some places it might have been a few $100s, which would have been, you know, pretty high, I would think, back then, right? Things varied depending on where you were. And if people lived in a certain area, they know what it was like in their area. They don't know that some area 2 states over, they could have been renting a 2-bedroom house for fucking $50 a month. Because they lived where they lived, you know? Basically, it's like, you know, the can't see the forest through the trees, and the can't see, and the other people can't see the trees to the forest, you know. So they get a house, they buy some land, and it costs them, maybe depending on how nice or how many acres of land they have, it could be could be $5,000 for you know, or less, significantly less if you're deciding you're going to live in a mobile home somewhere, or you get a house for 10, 12, maybe even with some land, you know, or in town, or you get some place out in the country on several acres for about $20,000, something like that, and they can afford to pay their mortgage because the mortgage is pretty low, and they got a pocket full of credit cards, and they got a job, and they bootstrap it. But see, the difference is bootstrapping worked for them, you know? It worked. That's why they tell you to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and just work hard, and because that's what they did, and it worked. you know? And it worked the same for everybody they knew. So when you say that things are fucked and then they think you're crazy, it's like you're talking about it's like you're speaking a foreign language, talking about, you know, some kind of alien planet or something, because that's not the planet that they've lived on and doesn't match their experience, you know? So they get some land out in the country and maybe a 2-story house and so on, and they get up and they go to work and they come home and they've got, you know, a couple acres of land and a house and a wife, and you know, when the holidays come around, the whole family stops by, because, you know, families were more supportive and there for each other back in the day for the most part, too. And, I mean, I'm not saying everybody's life was like this. I know it wasn't. But, I mean, that was, you know, Christmas and Thanksgiving and Easter and so on and so forth at our house, you know, when I was a kid. I had fucking 20 people or something over. You know, all the women would be in the kitchen cooking or chit-chatting, gossiping and stuff, and the men would be somewhere talking to each other, smoking and having a beer or whatever, and the kids would be over in some corner watching fucking TV or whatever, or playing with toys or, you know, whatever the hell, right? It would be this big meal, big feast with a ham and a turkey. And a whole lot of everything else, you know? All the fixings, you know? Real mashed potatoes, and gravy, and baked beans. They're like special baked beans, you know? Whole tables full of pies. Just, yeah. So that's like, you know, that's like my childhood. I use my dad as an example, you know, the boomer that, you know, you had that life. You got a big family, bunch of brothers and sisters, bunch of friends. People were more friendly. People, you know, you would meet, like if you, before the internet, social media and shit ruined the fucking world in a lot of ways. You would just meet a woman, talk to her, and ask her out, and you know, go pick her up, and you know, go do whatever, right? And there was a lot more shit to do too, you know. I mean, you know, like nowadays it's like, well, we could sit in our rooms and look at porn and whack off, or we could watch Netflix, or you could play video games, you know. But back then it was like, you know, arcade, pool hall, bowling alley, skating rink, drive-in movie theater. And then there's, you know, the point where they go and take little Susie's panties off, you know. When people would get together and they would have, you know, big parties and shit and throw keggers and, you know, the word would get around and you know. When the bars were hopping, you know, with live bands and music playing, and you had more freedom. If you got in a fight, it didn't matter. You didn't get in a whole lot of trouble. You get a slap on the wrist or nothing at all. Maybe a bloody nose, right? I'm just saying, trying to describe basically how I picture where there's a divide between the boomer, their experience. See, because that's just been their life. They had a life where they felt they had struggles, but things worked out. Because the system wasn't totally fucked. They grew up in a world where there were actually a number of politicians that were kind of trustworthy. And a lot of places, the sheriff was your friend, you know, and he looked out for you, and, you know, he would save the kitty cat from the tree for the little girl, you know. He was, you know, Howdy, Sheriff, how you doing? You know? Welcome to Mayberry. Yeah. I mean, of course, it's not universal, right? There's all sorts of, microcosms, different experiences depending on where people were. The experience of someone living in Haight-Ashbury in the 60s and 70s is going to be a hell of a lot different than the experience of somebody living in Arkansas, you know? Obviously, right? But I mean, there was abundant housing, abundant jobs and resources, endless fucking opportunity. So anyways, okay, but we're back to the house. They got the house. They got some land. You know, for their perspective is for a lot of them, right, is they sat, when they were in their, late their 20s or 30s or whatever, they spent a whole lot of their life, sitting on a porch, watching the sunset, listening to the birds sing, and hanging out with friends that actually spent time together and had conversations and chit chat, had a barbecue, and and I'm just saying. And then as they're sitting there, that house that they bought for $20,000, 80s, 90s comes around, and inflation starts, rising and rising. And they're watching their fucking financial portfolio, they're being like, oh man, my house is worth $250,000, my house is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars now. I only spent $20,000 on it. Imagine, you're like, oh hell yeah, this economy's doing great. See, that's what I'm saying. I'm just trying to explain where I think where the boomers were coming from, Like, man, it's great. This economy is great, Oh man, they're they raise them, because they're watching their assets get more and more valuable, right? Their house is worth more money. The car they bought for $40 is worth, $800 now. Yeah. Years later, they sell that house that they bought for $20,000. They turn around and sell it for $500,000 or more, or a few $100,000 at least, or something. And then they buy another place that's even nicer somewhere. They move. They got a better job now, working for years, and had a comfortable existence pretty much. Always had a house, always had a place where they could listen to the birds sing and watch the sunset, and always had a wife and a family around them that was, nice and supportive, a bunch of buddies and shit that they could call up on the phone and bullshit with. And all their buddies and their family members had similar life experiences to them. So they're just talking on the phone with their friends and their family and stuff, man. Oh man, ain't this economy doing great? Oh yeah, it's fantastic, man. I sold my house for like $1 million. Wow, man, yeah, I sold mine for $600,000. Fuck, man, I only paid $20,000 for that shit, man. Isn't that great? Yeah, oh man, great, And like, so now, you know, they retire at some point, and now, right, like their day is, you know, I mean, if they're a busybody, they're out working on projects, and they're mowing the grass, and they're waxing their truck, you know, every week or something, and whatever. But they've got all this cool shit. They got a nice property, and they wake up and have a nice breakfast, you know, sausage, eggs, and pancakes, fucking bacon or whatever the hell they like, right? But sipping the coffee in the morning, watching the sunrise, watching the birds, you know, listen to the birds sing and shit. And then they do whatever they're going to do that day. They mess around the house, and there's all sorts of shit for them to do around the house to keep them occupied and keep them happy. And but they've got enough resources now, you know, if they want to, they can just, hey, let's go see some live music. Hey, honey, let's go. Hey, you know, they got a concert playing down here. Let's go check out the concert. You want to come? Oh yeah, let's go. And they go do that, and they get home, and they bring home, you know, big bag of barbecue ribs or something, throw on the barbecue or some shit, or big freaking juicy, you know, tomahawk steaks or something to throw on the barbecue. Right? And they're lathered up in this, they got, you know, who knows, maybe great barbecue sauce, or just whole spice rack full of spices, and, you know, they got their multi-$1,000 grill sitting out on their nice deck behind their house, and the fucking birds are singing. Right? They got a nice big living room and a nice big bedroom with a comfortable, expensive king-size bed in there. A nice walk-in closet where they have all their, you know, hell, they've got multiple walk-in closets around the house. They've got 2 or 3 bathrooms to choose from, you know. And, you know, guys enjoy mowing the grass. I miss mowing the grass. I would probably mow somebody's lawn for free just to do it right now, because I haven't done it in years. Because I miss it. Yeah, right? See, not only do they have all this beauty surrounding them, and is their life filled with abundance, as everything they own and everything they put their money into has become more and more valuable over the years, right? And because of that, they're living in an area where they're surrounded by a whole bunch of people who have the exact same story as them, basically. And they all had their lives just get better and better. And everything they bought, I mean, for the most part, the people, because that's where they live, right? If you move into a neighborhood with a bunch of big farms and land and nice houses and so on and so forth, you're surrounded by other people who had things turn out pretty good for them because they were able to afford to buy a nice big house and some land and so on and so forth too, right? So they'll get together and talk or have barbecues and stuff like they used to, because they still interact with one another and they still have a relatively decent social life and marriage and, you know, on and on, whatever, right? Or if they're not married, if they're single, they're still capable of, you know, their generation is still, you know, has the capability to interact with one another and get together, and it's real easy for them to get together. Real easy for an old man to meet another, you know, to meet a woman, or an old woman to meet an old man, right? Because there's lots of them out there. And they know that their time is running short, and they don't want to be alone, you know, whatever, right? And they're used to be, you know, not being alone and whatever, right? So like that's good. That's a positive thing for them too, right? It's just they just have like they've just been winning and 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 winning, and as the dollar collapses, their house becomes worth more money. Their car becomes worth more money. Everything they have becomes worth more money. So the way they're seeing it is that dollar's not collapsing. It's fucking, I'm getting fucking rich over here. You know? Yeah, I'm just saying, like that's where the boomer's at, right? You know? It's like, you know, difference between like rich and poor is like poor people live in neighborhoods surrounded by other poor people who have the poor people experience because that's where the poor people live. Rich people are in circles with other rich people. They talk to them, they share life experiences, and they have, you know, people don't know how the other half lives and don't care to know, basically. At least the rich don't seem to give a shit about how the poor live or what their situation is, because from their perspective, if you just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and quit being lazy and making excuses, everything will work out great. Look at my life. Look at everybody I know. Their life is great. You see? All of our lives are great. See? This country's doing great. It's better than it's ever been. Yeah. Right? Because that is their lived experience. You see? Like, imagine how you would feel, right, if you bought a car for $300 and then years later when you went to sell it, you find out that now it's worth $5,000. Wouldn't you be like, hell yeah? Right? So yeah, that's I think that's what the situation with the boomer is, and they just have all this positive shit going on in their life. And see, not only that, but right, the kids. You know how the boomers like to chew us out, tell us, oh, you're lazy, titled, all this shit they say, right? Well, because again, their personal lived experience and memory, right? What is, they remember that you grew up in this nice house and, you know, so on and so forth. And they kind of just have you frozen as a child in their mind on some level. And they remember, you know, watching you unwrap your Christmas presents when you were 6 years old and riding your bicycle, you know. And they remember how you used to be happy, right? And you didn't used to complain so much, god damn it, you know. So like they picture you in their mind, when they picture, you know, their kids in their mind, right? They're not picturing like the real quality of their current life or the situation. They're picturing this kid grew up in this nice house with you know, acres of land around, you know. Yeah, he ate like a king, you know, right? Right? Cause he, right? And then, oh, I think we spoiled him too much, right? See, right? Yeah. See, I'm just saying. I'm like, I think I'm like reading the boomer mind here, right? Kind of. See, our experience is that we grew up in a much nicer situation because of how well off our parents had it, because of how much more affordable it was when we were younger. And as we grew up, we watched everything that was good about our lives and the world around us continue to get worse and worse, and everything we wanted to achieve in life get harder, get further and further away, and everything, that we wanted to buy get more and more out of touch and out of reach, while they had everything that they had already continue to rise and rise in value. So like their wallets are just like exponentially exploding out of their pants, and they're looking at us going, what the fuck's wrong with you? Right? Because their experience is they just had a nice barbecue and sat out on the porch listening to the birds sing while they sipped their tea, and they just got done mowing the grass, and they feel like also like they're also their a sense of fulfillment too, because when you got a house, you got land, you got shit to do, then it's like you feel like you're needed. And if I don't do it, well, this doesn't get done. See, I'm a real man. You see what I'm saying, right? We don't have that because we live in an artificially controlled environment where we're fucking stuck, slaving away to corporations and never being able to afford to have a real fucking anything of our own. We're stuck in like you will own nothing and eats the bugs world, basically, or on our fucking way there in a damn hurry. While our parents, sit on a porch swing and watch the sunset or something, and they're literally like they're like rising up in the air, almost bumping their head on the thing that's holding up the porch, because their wallet just keeps growing and growing, and they have to keep buying new pants because it keeps ripping through their pants. You see what I'm saying? Because everything they touch turns to gold like fucking Midas, and because everything that they built from a time period where things worked out, where things were better, they had all this shit established already. So when the fucking inflation started, it just fucking like shot their goddamn monetary value to the moon. So they're like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. This is the best time ever. See? So while they lived like with that, those of us, born later on from like millennials and beyond or whatever, we maybe grew up and our parents maybe had a nice house, and we, when we went to buy something, it was more affordable. We bought candy bar for a quarter or a nickel, depending on what time period you're in. We went and got a soda pop for, a dime or two or something. Get a glass bottle full of Coca-Cola or something. We went and, or whatever the hell, right? So like a lot of us, not all of us, I understand this isn't universal, but had an experience where even if you were in a terrible situation years ago as a kid, even if you were like an orphan that's like beat by their fucking and some beat, you got nuns beating the shit out of you in some terrible orphanage or whatever, right? And your situation was shit. When you got out there in the world, if you got out there in the world in time, like you could see things were a hell of a lot better than they are now. Your opportunities were a hell of a lot more abundant. You could see a future that looked great, And then as the years pass by, you look back at that, and you can see just things just getting worse and worse and worse. The economy goes to shit. The prices are ridiculous. I mean, like me, I'm unhappy, right? Because I don't have the house and the porch to sit on with the barbecue to grill up some fucking steaks or whatever, you know? I don't have a wife. I know a lot of that part of that's my fault, but I mean the fucking internet, social media and all that shit basically ruined all that shit, man. And you gotta track down a fucking unicorn or something nowadays, and you've gotta be like you gotta be like Superman and then hunt down a unicorn, right, to get it. So like a lot of us also are alone. Not only are we, and that makes it even worse. That makes everything, that makes our housing twice as expensive because we don't have a wife also working, splitting the fucking bills with us or whatever, right? Helping with, whatever, right? I don't know how it is that, look, see, they don't care, right, that so much that the price of gas is double what it was not too long ago, because it doesn't really negatively impact them a whole lot, because while that's happening, their house is worth more money. Their truck that they bought 5 or 10 years ago is worth more money than it was when they bought it, You see what I'm saying? So they're up there basically in their fucking castles. And this is where I see like the forest through the trees fucking analogy, right? It's like, picture this, right? The boomers and then shit are like up there in their castle, and they're sitting out on the ledge, looking over the domain, right? And there's this big forest, and their castle looks out above the trees, and all the poor peasant millennials and after, right? And late Gen Xers and shit, we're living down in the mud at the forest floor, so they can't see us. And you see, because we're down there in our little in our hovels, or sleeping in a log or whatever, down below the forest canopy. Well, they're up in the eagle's nest in their fucking castle or whatever. Everything looks beautiful out there, honey. Do you see the sunset? Yes, it's lovely. And if they do go out into the world to go shopping or whatever, and they notice poor people out there, they just think, oh, what's wrong with this person? Doesn't he know that this is a land of, doesn't he know that this is the type of world where you basically can just bend over and pick up gold nuggets, by golly, right? Because that's their experience. So they just look at the bum, the homeless person, the poor person, fuck's wrong with them? It's your fault, right? You're just lazy and entitled and don't want to work, whatever, right? I don't know, man. You ever see that fucking clip of Paris Hilton where she's like, oh my God, just stop being poor. That's kind of where their head is, right? Because they don't get it. They don't get it. I know, and they don't care enough about our... they're not even going to listen to us trying to tell them how it is and what it's like, because It doesn't match their experience and the experience of all their friends and family members that they talk to on the phone, and the experience of their wife who they sit next to in bed, and their husbands and wives or whatever that they chat to. They sit there saying, "Oh, I'm worried about these kids, man. You know," and they're just like, "Yeah, I just think you don't want to work. I don't know what's wrong. These kids today are so entitled, you know." Right? Basically, I mean, dude, you realize that there was a time in the past where there was so much, like, gold rubies, gemstones, like, shit like that. There was a time at some point in the past where you could basically just almost, like, literally be fucking picking gold from the streets. A time where you could, like, crawl under a porch out front of a saloon, sweep the dirt up and pan it, and get a bunch of gold dust, right? You're like literally picking up gold from the streets, right? That there was a time, right? So imagine telling those people who lived in a time where you just could bend over and pick up gold from the streets. Imagine telling them how hard it is to be, a millennial or a Gen Z or whatever the fuck, right? Or Gen whatever. You know what I mean? You know, and then when you tell them, right? You tell them, hey, there's no fucking jobs out there. They're like, I was just going through town the other day, and there's help wanted signs everywhere. Because there are help wanted signs everywhere. But they're a fucking lie. They're a facade to fool the boomers so the boomers don't wake the fuck up, but they're there, right? I mean, you go online and there's just job listings everywhere. Tons and tons of job listings. But they're not fucking hiring. You know? You tell them there's a problem with housing, you know? You'd be like, well, I just looked on this website and there's thousands of apartments available. Like, no, actually they're con artists, and if you go there and pay them $100 for their background check, they'll just keep the $100, and then they'll do that to like 1,000 people every month. And then they've got $100,000 a month instead of fucking 2,000. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, right? That's what's... Yeah. So like the whole help wanted thing, that's just... Yeah, they might stack applications up in a corner on some file, and they probably got AI or some minimum wage, somebody to dig through them, and oh yeah, here, check this one out. Be like, well, that one's got good handwriting, I see. Let's look good. Sort the ones with good handwriting first. They're probably better because their handwriting is nice, right? or it's typed out, you know, whatever the fuck. Oh look, they used all the buzzwords that our algorithm wants, right? Oh yes, definitely only pick the ones that have the buzzwords, right? See, they don't know what it's fucking like, because, you know, when it came to like getting a job for them too, man. Getting a job for them was, they walk into the grocery store or something, and hey, are you guys hiring? You need help around here? Yeah, I'm just looking for it. You're like, well, could use somebody to sweep up maybe, and like, sure, yeah, would you do that? And you're like, okay, I'll pay you, you know, this many dollars an hour. You come in here. You come in here every morning. Like, oh yes, sir, right away. Okay, I'll do it. Okay, oh boy, hey, would you want me to sweep the floor right now? Well, sure, son. Here, grab a broom. Oh, okay. Oh, I got a job. You know, that's their fucking getting a job experience, right? Or they just flipped open the newspaper, called a few phone numbers, sat down with someone, hired on the spot, you know, probably within You know, I mean, literally, like back in the day, even when I was younger, dude. Like I squandered some of the better days, right? Because I was fucking high, and I already looked at the world and thought it was shit, you know, and that it didn't pay enough and blah 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 and stuff's too expensive. I thought that already back when I was 16. Shit. I had no idea it was ever gonna get like this. Shit, looking back on that, I'm like, bitch, I would have been rich, you know? I probably would have fucking had a house or something. I fucking started working when I was like a teenager or something. Just kept at it, I would have had something. Yeah? But now it's like, show's over, curtain closed, you know? Door slams in your face, you know? Yeah, dude, basically we're at a time period where, like, you know, all the doors that were once open have been slammed in our face now. And it's like, the show's over. I mean, there's an illusion happening to keep people from panicking, because the last thing that the government wants is for the boomers to wake up and realize how bad things really are and freak out, because the boomers have pretty high combined net worth. They've got money, they've got influential positions and like city councils and school boards and, you know, all these different businesses and companies and organizations and shit, and they can get a lot of people together with a lot of money and make a big stink. So they don't want the boomers to realize that there's no real job market for all the younger generations. They don't want the boomers to realize, you know. So of course they're like, hey, all you corporations that are in league with us and that actually run the country, why don't you guys put all these help wanted signs everywhere so that we can trick the boomers into thinking that there's this huge job market out there. They're like, sure thing, we'll do, you know? So yeah, I think that's basically kind of a explanation to the best of my, you know, reasoning here, you know, just off the top of my head, of the boomer mentality, right? And of course it's not universal. None of this shit is a universal fit for everybody, but the ones, when people talk about when all these people talk about the boomers, though, that's who they're talking about. Not everybody had the same type of life, the same experiences, lived in the same area, but the whole bunch of them where basically, like, that's their story. I mean, you know, not in great detail, but pretty much. And I think that's where they're coming from, like, where their thinking is at, right? It goes with their own lived experience and the lived experiences of all the people that are surrounding them. And who are all the people that are surrounding them? They're the people that have financial success like they do. They're the people whose financial portfolios are growing like theirs are. They're the people who also bought a house years ago when they were young and their house got worth a lot more money, so then they sold it and then they moved out to the country and now they live next door to you. And you guys have a similar story and a similar background and similar fucking history, and now you're fucking stuck, you know, like, oh, money, everything's just getting better, you know, right? And they just talk to each other and they hang out and blah, 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 and they talk to their friends on the phone, same situation, and they all bitch about, oh man, these kids today, all they do is complain. Don't they know if they just pull themselves up by their bootstraps that the world will just fucking shower gold onto them? Because that's literally their experience. That's what happened to them, right? So they don't understand the perspective of someone who's had the opposite experience. See, their experience is, maybe they grew up whether they grew up poor or they grew up in a nice, decent household. Also, right, in their mind, they think back on, you know, their memories from their childhood and the stories of their parents and their grandparents and so on. And, you know, the depression that was there in the time, you know, of when their parents were kids and when their grandparents were around, and they heard all these stories about, you know, the Great Depression, and oh yeah, people were struggling for food, hitchhiking around looking for jobs, and, you know, and your grandparents, you know, lived in a house with a dirt floor, and, you know, and yeah, so on and so forth, right? So they look back on that as like a beginning of their story, is the beginning of their story of the history of our country in their mind, from their memory, is that their grandparents or their parent or whatever lived in a house with a dirt floor or a cabin in the woods or something, right? And then their parents were able to work their way up and have a relatively nice house in a nice neighborhood that they grew up in, and they go down and hang out at the cabin by the lake with all their, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 or however many brothers and sisters and all their cousins, and they'd all play together, right? So there's, you know, things improving from dirt floor cabin and struggling to get food to having nice house and going to a cabin by the lake in the summer, and then you know, they grow up and they could go in and, well, I want a soda pop, here's a nickel, you know, I ain't got change for a nickel, kid. Oh gee willikers, can I just have 5 of them then? Okay, here you go, right? Oh, I'll take this comic book too, and this, you know, I'll take a soda pop and this candy bar over here, and I'll take that candy bar and that candy bar. Okay, son, here, have a nice day, right? Rides off on his fucking bicycle, meets up with his 12 friends, and they go right around with their fucking, you know, comic books and their fucking bubble gum and their candy bar and their soda pops, and they, you know, and then they grow up, and, you know, everything's great. There's a massive amount of freedom. They get to go, you know, cruise around the lake on a speedboat or whatever, or go fishing, or go to, you know, big barbecue parties with their buddies, and go to all these, you know, live music and all these entertaining things that were all over the place to keep people occupied and entertain them, you know, the kind of shit that really basically doesn't exist anymore, because now we're just supposed to stare at our fucking screen, listen to people rant all day. We gotta watch the TV now forever. Play some video games, man. We could beat off the portals. That's life. That's the way it is today. Fucking sucks now, and it is fucking gay. Alright. That's life. So yeah, basically, you know, like, I'm just saying, their narrative arc in their mind goes from starvation, dirt poor, got a house, got a better 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 house, now I got a better house, and I sit in the porch by this and watch the sunset while I listen to the birds sing, and I you know, and now I'm gonna go to a live concert and whatever the fuck, and then I'm gonna come home and I'm gonna grill up some fucking tomahawk steaks for dinner. Maybe some lobster too. Why not? And then I'm going to talk to my wife, and I'm going to call up my buddy Rod, and we're going to bitch about how these damn kids today are so lazy. They just need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. So yeah, I think that's basically what you know, there's my boomer rant, my attempt to understand the boomer mind, right? There it is. I realized that I left some stuff out. Right? There's another aspect that I never even thought about discussing, and that's the fact that another thing that solidifies the ideas that they have in their mind, I think, is, you know, between their lived experience, and then there's also all these inspiring stories about all these people who came from nothing and achieved great success, you know, like Carl Karcher making a hot dog cart, and then that turning in, you know, ending up expanding until now it's Carl's Jr., or the story of Ray Kroc, you know, taking over, you know, McDonald's, going from being a door-to-door salesman to being the owner, the founder of McDonald's, right? Or the story of Colonel Sanders and how he, you know, had this little cabin or something by the road, and he just put a sign up and say, you know, come on, you know, Colonel Sanders, you know, come. He would just cook people dinner at his house or whatever, and they'd pay him, and then that allowed him to make enough money to get a place to have like an actual restaurant, and that ended up turning into a food chain and so on and so forth, because the economy was great and there was a lot more freedom, and a lot of people did that. A lot of people, there's a lot of success stories of people that they work hard, right? And they started from dirt poor, and they did something, and they created something where they ended up rising to the highest heights and becoming fabulously wealthy. And not only did they hear these stories and everything, but they've heard these stories in their own personal lives from people that they know, and from people that, you know, their parents' generation, from people that they knew who had done things like that themselves. You know, they've got friends that started a business from nothing. That, you know, well, my buddy, he, you know, lived in he used to rent out a little room in this. It's basically a flop house. And he just went out, he swept floors, and he got this idea one day that you need something to hold the shower curtain up. So he came up with these rings, and he went around and he started selling them, and now he's the inventor of the shower curtain ring, and now he's rich. What's wrong with you, kid? You know, right? I don't know. I think I kind of understand it now. Like, I was thinking about it, and I think I kind of get it, right? Like, it would be like, imagine, like, during a time where, imagine if, like, all a time back in the early days with all the, you know, old school archaeologists, or all the old school explorers, you know, and how they, you know, if they talk to you nowadays, right, they'd probably be like, well, why don't you just go, you don't have an adventurous spirit, why don't you just go be an explorer, like, because everything's already been discovered, you know, why don't you just go discover a mummy's tomb, you know? Well, for one thing, you have to have a license, and you're not allowed to do it anymore without a fucking license. You have to go to college for fucking like 9 years or some shit and spend millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then you have to get into an Ivy League school to even be allowed to study the subject and get the licensing to be able to even fucking do it, right? And they'd be like, what? Pepsi Posh, I did it, you know, I dropped out of school when I was in 6th grade, and I went out and discovered King Tut's tomb, by golly, you know, because, like, that's, yeah. I'm just saying, the difference in lived experience and in the influences around them and the stories that they've heard and the things that they've seen basically cement them into this mindset where they cannot see the world that's right in front of them, because the world of the people in poverty and the world of the millennial and the zennial and the so on and so forth, it's not even the same planet as the one they live on currently, this very day. Because this shit works for them. Because what they needed for this world to be a positive place for them to be They already fucking had it a long time ago. Right? And they're lived and shared experiences with the people that they're around and all that sort of shit. Makes it pretty much damn near impossible for them to comprehend or even to entertain the notion that we're not just a bunch of lazy, worthless fucks that don't want to, we just don't want to pull it up by our bootstraps. Right? Because, okay. I don't know. It's kind of like this. It's like, it's like they're at a big party, right? They're at this big party in a big fancy mansion, right? It's got a giant ballroom, right? The ballroom. Wouldn't you like to be in the ballroom? The fancy ballroom. They're living in the party in the ballroom. And they're talking to us on the phone or on the internet, and they can't understand why we're not having a good time at the ballroom. And, people their age with their financial resources, they're just opening the door for them and letting them on in, one after another. So they see people coming in the door, they're like, well, what do you mean you're not in the ballroom? Come on in. They're like, they won't let me. The door is slammed in my face. Like, they don't get it. They're like, bullshit. That wouldn't happen. Everybody loves it in here in the ballroom. We've got lobster and steak in the ballroom. Yeah, dude, the boomers are almost like, that scene from They Live, right? Where the politicians and the wealthy, elites or whatever, humans or whatever, they're in this room with these fucking aliens giving a speech. Like, combined efforts. The annual income, the people here has grown by 50% in the last quarter. And like, yeah, right? Like they're there in that meeting, enjoying the wealth and the comforts, and they don't hang out in the homeless encampment. And if they know it's there, they just see it as a nuisance of all these. Well, those people doing well like we are. They're just worthless and lazy. No good baddies, that's what they are. We certainly can't allow worthless filth like that to pollute our streets. Something's got to be done about them. That filthy scum. They must be drunks and worthless losers. They just are lazy and don't want to work. Yeah, see, because they're living in the cloud, up there in their fucking eagle's nest on the top of the castle, right? And they cannot see the forest floor below, right? I think that's pretty much it.